What is the direction toward which you're changing? It's not change for change's sake. It's not change because the state of Vermont has said that the Common Core standards are the it. It is change with a direction for improving student learning in the ways identified by those standards, which ideally your team and your schools will own. So it's sustained over time. This will take time, but we don't have another generation to wait to have this work impact students in the classroom. It moves the entire system. That doesn't mean everybody on the same page at the same time, but it means some shared agreements about the parameters of what it means to fully implement the Common Core standards. Raising the average level of quality and performance while at the same time decreasing the variation among units and engaging people in analysis. This is the piece I think that often has been missing in some places, in analysis and understanding of why some actions work and others don't. So as you're implementing the Common Core, who are the people involved in having the dialogues, and how are they supported to have the dialogue about what are we noticing that's working and what is not working? And when it's a high-stakes environment driven by the tests that are associated with the Common Core, sometimes it doesn't automatically feel safe for people to say, you know, I don't understand about this, or it looks, you know, we devoted a huge amount of time to this particular effort, and now we see it's not working. But those conversations sometimes are the most important. So the purpose, our purpose here, is to help you as action teams to develop systems of professional learning across schools. The state of Vermont has standards for professional learning. How many of you have those standards already, or could tell me where they are? So we will post those also. Some of you yes, and some of you no, and that's fine. That's where we are. And so we will post those on the website so that you can access those easily. Deep implementation of the Common Core standards. If you look at the resources that are currently available, many of them are at the awareness level. What are the standards? How are they organized? How do they work? That's an important piece. But to move to the classroom, we need to begin to have resources that are really at the implementation level, and then ultimately that also support sustainability over time. So this piece is really focused more on implementation than on awareness. Yesterday I learned that with the group in Stratton that there were some wishes they had about some pieces that were more awareness pieces. And so in the next couple of sessions I'll blend in more of that as well. So we'll get some of that. But anyway, so deep implementation is what we're looking for. Do we see this in every classroom? And if we see it, do we know what it is? Significantly improve student learning in the ways that the Common Core describes, and that's across subject areas, not just in math and English language arts, but in literacy. In the Common Core says in history, social studies, science, and technical subjects. In general, most places expand that to just be in the subject areas, even those which are not technically technical subjects. And then collaboration through working collectively to achieve these goals. And so we'll be working across those four purposes of your teams, being here as a team. I'm going to stop there just for a second and ask you as a team to talk about where you are in relation to these four purposes as we begin our work together today. So 2 minutes for a deep reflective conversation. First on go. Question of, so what is the vision? How will we know what deep implementation looks like? And I'm going to share some pieces and some examples to help get to that, and then I'm going to give you some time to frame your vision. I'm actually going to do that a couple of times during the day in different ways. So this slide comes from achievethecore.org, which is the website of Student Achievement Partners. How many of you are familiar with the website for Student Achievement Partners? So a number of you. For those of you who aren't, the Student Achievement Partners played a significant role in the writing of the Common Core standards, and they now are committed to supporting the implementation through the development of anything from white papers to sample templates to sample units and professional development materials. All of the material on that website is basically copyright free. You can change it, you can adapt it, you can publish it, you can do whatever you need to do with it. It's called open source licensing. So the first piece is the knowledge, which is really the awareness piece. A lot of us have been working on that so far. The second is vision. How are we going to bring focus and coherence so it doesn't feel like this is so overwhelming that we can't do it? And at the same time, how do we get the focus on the right things so that the Common Core doesn't get reinterpreted through the ways that we've always done things? Yeah? Easy to do that. The development of metrics. How do we get more specific statements of what we expect to see? What would those be in your respective districts and schools? Building capacity through teams, not just the teams that are here today, but we'll be doing a process later today of looking at who are the other groups and teams within your districts and schools that are central to playing this out. Because although I'm working from the assumption that the groups of you who are here today are in a position to at least make recommendations, strong recommendations, and decisions about where you're going to go, you can't do the whole job yourselves. Because if you try to, you'll get frazzled, you'll lose focus, and then it just won't go where it needs to go. So who are the groups that are involved? How close can we get to the classroom to make sure that teachers both have the opportunity to know what the vision is, to participate in its design, and to be supported in the ways they need to be to make it real? And then staying engaged over time. So it's developing, it's continued learning. It's really setting up a process. I haven't met anyone yet. There might be someone in this room, but I haven't met anyone yet who knows it all about the Common Core and how to make it work. So, and I've been doing this probably as much as like maybe 10 other people in the country for the last almost 4 years, and I still don't have it all figured out. Maybe I shouldn't have told you that till the end of the day, though. So part of this is about what we can learn together. And we have to set up those systems within schools so that people will be able to learn well together. So my question for you is, what is your shared vision of the Common Core? What will it look like when the standards are fully implemented in ELA, literacy, and in the subject areas, and mathematics? One of the things that I think is important in that vision building is to not talk about the Common Core the way most people do, which is two parts: ELA/literacy and mathematics. Thank you. Because what I'm finding is that /literacy becomes just sort of an afterthought. And in reality, the literacy in the subject areas is a key piece, not only of building students' literacy competence, but in fact in building their deep learning of content of those subject areas over time. And then how will everyone know, share, and own the vision of the Common Core? So the work you do today, toward the end of the day, I'll ask you to do some planning for who needs to know what happened today and some of the decisions or suggestions or recommendations that you're making. So that's where we're going. This is a graphic that I sketched out one day on a paper napkin in the school district where I was doing some work that has become, it basically is a conceptual model for how I do my work. And I think it is what's important about this, you hear a lot of talk about alignment of the Common Core. But alignment to me is a two-dimensional concept. Align. And this is about congruence. If any part of this system changes, the other parts need to change to work together. So at the center is the learner, and for me that's the strengths and the needs of the learner. In the context of the Common Core, curriculum, the standards fit there. Are the assessments, especially formative assessments, aligned with the standards of the Common Core for the constructs that are in those standards? Are students getting feedback about their learning of those skills and the concepts that are in the Common Core standards? And then, is instruction scaffolded? Are the building blocks built from where we find students are with assessment to what the standard calls for? Around that is wrapped the supports for making sure that all of that is congruent So what data do we need to be looking at to help us improve instruction, or to give that feedback to individual students, or to make sure students know where they are in their learning in relation to the Common Core? Leadership and supervision. How clear is the vision? Do the evaluation processes or walkthroughs, are the messages teachers getting aligned with or congruent with what the Common Core stands for? And then professional development or professional learning. And then around all that, the idea of building a system. You know, I think in our experience in implementing the Vermont framework of standards in the past, we got some really strong pockets of implementation. But I don't know that there are a whole lot of places that got a system that worked across the board, across all grade levels in every classroom. And that's really what we're looking for. So systems, that takes leadership, and I think a key part of that is leadership teams. And it takes tailoring the resources to the particular needs and to the purpose. This is an example from a district in Columbia, South Carolina, where I'm doing some work, and they took my congruence model and they sort of made it their own. What was important to them, and this is another aspect, was to show very clearly that the Common Core sits in the context of some other things that are important to them. But it's not that we're doing technology over here and looking at student work as a separate initiative and then having the Common Core in this other place, but that they all need to work together. They've just recently designed this and are now starting to base their implementation decisions off of how these pieces work with each other. So it's just an example. You have in your packet or on your tables a pink sheet of paper. This particular version does come from Richland too, but you'll see at the bottom, I've adapted this from work of Conrad Ball Middle School in Loveland, Colorado. They had built a configuration map around standards prior to the Common Core, and they gave me permission to adapt it and to share it with anyone who might find it of value. A configuration map is a developmental continuum working toward what full implementation would look like. And you'll see that across the top there, you'll see on my slide I've still got numbers, but I've taken the numbers off on the handout because what I've found is that when people see the numbers, they think this is a rubric that we can score ourselves with. And this is not about scoring ourselves. This is about being able to reflect on where are we and where are we going next and what will it look like when we get there. This is one version of this, and I'm going to give you some time to work with it, because ultimately what I'm going to suggest is for you to have your own version that says what this will look like and what the progression is that you expect to see, I think is very important. So you see that the levels of implementation are across the top, from standards awareness to standards based, and many of us thought for a long time, I did, that when we got to standards based we were there. But in fact, this moves all the way to standards and data informed, or some people like to say standards and data driven. And what you'll notice in that last column, well, let me just take you across the first one. So this is developed around, on the left-hand side, around different aspects of implementation of the Common Core. And the first one is just the Common Core standards. And the question to the teacher is, how do students learn the Common Core standards in your classroom? So at the first point, at standards awareness, the question is, what Common Core standards should I teach? Because until I'm clear about that, it's not likely I'm going to be teaching them. Or I might be teaching some, but not all, for which I'm responsible. Then I know what the Common Core standards are, and I use them to focus my planning. Okay, so now we're starting that sort of initial implementation. I know the Common Core standards, and I'm clear which standards are my responsibility to teach and assess. So now I'm taking it to the point that I'm starting to look at what am I assessing and how does that relate to the Common Core standards. 2, I inform my students of which Common Core standards we will be focusing on. When you change this for yourself, you might want to fix this little grammatical problem we've got going on here. But anyway, we will be focusing on before we begin instruction. So the students, now we're to a point that it's not just about the teacher, but the students are being brought in. And then at standards and data informed, it's my students can explain what they are expected to know and be able to do using specific language and examples. And that's where we've got full implementation on that aspect of Common Core implementation. You'll see that there are similar continua for curriculum and unit planning, assessment, analysis of data, and instruction, which is the part I had started with. And then these folks in Richland, too, just last week added the technology row. What I'm going to ask you to do is to take this configuration map. I'm not going to read you the whole thing, as I've just read you the first line. And I'm going to ask you to look at it, and then as a team, determine where are you now in relationship to this, to these different pieces. So you might put like a dot. Where are you? Just a self-assessment reflection. Where can you be by June 2014? So you start with where are we? Where could we reasonably be by June 2014? And then where can you be by June 2016? Because I do understand that school has already started this year. However, if there aren't some pieces that move to routine practice this year, we're still almost 4 years after the publication of the Common Core, not in a place where students are experiencing any of that learning. So that's why I think that piece is important. And then, what will it take to get there? So the first part of this conversation is just where do you want to get to by when? As you're doing that piece, I'm imagining that you might say, we don't like this part. A group yesterday said, are we allowed to take off the technology row? Yes, absolutely. Someone else said, are we allowed to, and they wanted to add something else. I forget what I want you to do is make this yours and determine where you are in relation to it. And then, once you've said, we're going to get here by 2014, I want you to have the early part of the conversation about what's it going to take in your setting to get there. If you say we're going to do these things this year, what needs to happen? Some of you already know some things you're planning to do this year. Do they still sit well with you when you look at what's called for here? And then what are the implications for your work as an action team?